Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the final edition of The View from the Opposition. This week it comes from Jacob Murtagh, who's head of national sport for our parent company, Reach PLC, and also a massive Brentford fan. So we're going to get the insight into Newcastle's opponents this Sunday and what is a huge game for Newcastle United. They need to match Manchester United's result at Brighton, and if they finish 7th, they are then hoping Man City beat Man United in the FA Cup a week later, but they can also finish 6th should Chelsea, however unlikely it seems, lose to Bournemouth and Newcastle beat Brentford. They are the permutations. Jacob, welcome to the podcast. How are you keeping? You well?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I watched Thomas Frank's press conference, I think it was yesterday, and he was asked about kind of ensuring that his side still put out a performance despite the fact they've got nothing to play for. And he said, look, I would like to think we would put in a top performance anyway. He praised Eddie Howe's for the job he's done. He praised Newcastle for still being within a shout of Europe. What are you expecting from Brentford this Sunday? Will they give Newcastle a good game?
Yeah, it's a funny one actually, because Newcastle, when Brentford have come up against them in the past, generally have struggled quite a lot. Especially at our place, and even the game earlier this season was one of our better performances. But yeah, it's going to be a tough game. Brentford are kind of pretty as much as close to full strength as they have been for most of the season, really. They had a terrible time of injuries, which coincided with a really bad run in form. Obviously, we were without Ivan Toney for half the season as well, due to his ban. But now they've got quite a lot of attacking options with kind of Brian and Mbeumo's back fit, Johan Wisser as well, and Kevin Schade, the record signing. So, there's certainly be a threat in attack. I think defensively is where Brentford have struggled a little bit this season. But again, they've really had some injury issues. The whole back four was out. First choice back four was out at one stage. But Ethan Pinnock is back fit. So that's a big plus for them.
Yeah, and there are some key players. Well, one key player that I am a massive fan of, and people of this podcast know I would move heaven and earth to get him to Newcastle United, and that is Rico Henry. He won't be available. He's been out for the majority of the season. How big of a miss has he been?
He's been a big miss because he was the only kind of recognised kind of left backs in the squad. We also had Aaron Hickey, the Scotland international, but he's had a terrible time of injuries as well. I mean, he can play at right or left back, but both of them have been out injured. So until we signed Sergio Reguilon on loan from Spurs in January, we didn't have anyone there. Vitaly Janelt played there at some parts, but it really was kind of makeshift. So yeah, he's been a big miss, and I think actually once we do have him back, it will be like, I know having a new signing, and I know people say that, but it really will feel like that because he's been out so long.
It just seems like loads of Premier League sides this season have been decimated by injuries. Newcastle have had horrendous luck. Manchester United, another side, Chelsea as well. You guys, it seems like there's something in the water. But you mentioned there a couple of players who I think Newcastle United fans will be, I don't know if fearing is the right word, but definitely keeping an eye on. Ivan Toney and Mbeumo as well, who I would love to see on the flank at Newcastle. But we'll concentrate on Ivan Toney because I think it's fair to say, Jake, that this is probably going to be his final game for Brentford. He's likely to leave in the summer. I was a little bit shocked when he came back from his ban and pretty much straight away before he even kicked the ball said, yeah, I want to play in the Champions League. I want to go to a bigger club. I thought a bit of loyalty wouldn't go amiss there, Ivan. But anyway, if it is indeed his last game for Brentford, he'll want to send the fans away happy. He'll want to leave them with a good memory and also, a good performance against Newcastle. I know he hasn't scored. I think is it 8 games or something like that. But he'll want to put himself in the shop window even more.
Yeah, he has struggled of late, kind of with injuries. Obviously, he came back from the ban, and he was on a rich vein of form. I think he got 4 and 5 or something like that. But yeah, he struggled more recently. I think he's had a bit of a hip issue. And he, wasn't missed a couple of games as well. But I think he'll be keen to go out on a high. I think you're right. I think it will be his last game for Brentford. Where he ends up, it remains to be seen. But I think he'll be keen to go on a high. I mean, he's hopefully going to go into the Euros as well, right? So he needs to kind of, I wouldn't say put himself in the shop window, but he needs to rediscover a bit of form before Gareth Southgate getting in that squad.
Yeah, he certainly does. I think Callum Wilson had one eye on a seat to the Euros, but he's been missing the last couple of games. But Eddie Howe said in his press conference that hopefully he will be back and available for Sunday. So it could be a kind of a fight for that third seat on the plane, because I think Ollie Watkins alongside Harry Kane will take the other two. Talk to me about Brentford at home. They are 14th in the league in the form table for the last 6 games at home, 1-1, drawn 4. So they're not really losing at home, but they're not picking up the victories either.
I think when they first came to the Premier League, it was obviously a new stadium, packed house. That was the first year that they had full crowds again post-COVID. And it was a tough place to go then. The home form was really good, but it hasn't. I think it's probably coincided this year with how we've been performing generally. It hasn't been a great season. I think a lot of people will be pleased to see the back of it, to be honest, given the injury issues and stuff. I think we've fared pretty well up until this year, and we haven't really pushed on. Again, we had the injuries and stuff, so I think we'll kind of draw a line under it and kind of go again next season. But it hasn't been the fortress that we'd hoped.
Was there ever a fear that you guys could get sucked into the battle for survival? I know at the moment, I think you have 39 points, so you're well above it. But was there a point when you were looking over your shoulder a little bit worried?
No, I think so. I think the manager would probably never admit it and come out and say it, but we were on a really bad run of form. And Luton were picking up a few results and stuff like that. And it was looking pretty hairy at one stage. But then we had a run where we had Sheffield United at home, who we beat, and then we had Luton away, and who we hammered actually. So that was they were 2 massive results. The funny thing is that I don't think since Brentford have been in the Premier League they've ever been in the bottom 3. So even though at one stage it was looking a bit hairy, like I said, but they haven't actually been in the relegation zone, which is quite some feat really when you think about it.
Yeah, it's quite the achievement. I mean, I'm very happy that they're not going down. I'm a big fan of Brentford. I like the way they play. I like the manager. I like quite a few of the players, and I think it's really good to see them become an established Premier League side. I just like the journey as well, and the people that are working behind the scenes. It's just a nice story to see them kind of fighting maybe above their station somewhat, but becoming, as I said, an established Premier League side. Their form of the last 6 home and away, they're 6th in the form table, 11 points from 18. So they are finishing the season relatively strongly after, like you say, they went through a bit of a bad spell, but they are trying to finish it as strong as possible.
Yeah, I think as well, that real bad run of form coincided with the injuries. When we had so many key players out, it was a patched up side. A lot of the time. I mean, I think in January we had one recognised striker in Neil Maupay, who we had on loan from Everton, and we had 4 people out, 4 of our kind of first choice attackers. So any team would struggle when that kind of happens. But I think players have come back at the right time. There's still a couple of long-term absentees. Rico Henry, like you mentioned, Aaron Hickey still out. But I think from an attacking point of view as well, we really are a threat going forward.
I think it's just something that you guys found yourself in a position outside the relegation zone when you had been missing Ivan Toney for so long, because obviously he's the man that grabs the majority of goals, and it was really nice to see that the other players around who had the responsibility of scoring the goals had done enough to put you in a relatively strong position, and as we say, not in that relegation zone. I mean, you mentioned Neil Maupay there. What's it like to have him in your team and in your squad? Because he's a player that everybody loves to hate, but he seems to absolutely relish it.
Yeah, I think he plays up to a kind of pantomime villain card now, to be honest with you. Like you say, he's the kind of player that all fans love, when he's on your side. And then I think all fans and players for opposition hate him. But yeah, I think, I think he plays up to it now. And I think he's actually quite good value on social media and stuff, having a bit of a crack. with I think he got into a bit of a spat with Luke Littler at one stage as well. But yeah, no, he's great, and I think fingers crossed we'll make that signing permanent in the summer, because I think actually he's, he really struggled badly at Everton, but brought him home, so to speak, at Brentford, where he had a lot of success before, and I think he'd provide a good option, and hopefully we get him for a kind of knockdown price.
He went away last week because it was due to have a second child. So the update I found there doesn't say whether he'll be back or not, but he may well be involved in some way or another. In terms of Newcastle, Jake, what do you make of them? Obviously, we've mentioned at the start what they're fighting for. Still got a chance of Europe. They've let it slip slightly to big frustration in many ways, because it was in their control in the last 2 games. They've dropped points against teams they probably really shouldn't do. What have you made of them this season?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one, because I think after the highs of last year, getting into the Champions League, which I think was actually almost you overachieved, I think, that year, and I think because of that, expectations naturally rise with that. So you look at it and you think, okay, well, compared to last year, you're not having a great season, but actually, it hasn't been a disaster. And if you were to get into Europe, I know it's not the same as the Champions League, but it'd still be a good achievement for the club like Newcastle, because only the Liverpools of this world, the Arsenals and City really are the side you expect to get in the top 4 kind of every year. You see with Man United struggles. No club no matter the size, has a divine right to be kind of at the top table. And then you always get a club who's a bit of a surprise package. So this year it's Aston Villa, who have really kind of done really well to get into that top 4 and kind of break up the kind of monopoly of some of the bigger clubs. So I think it's been probably a lot of fans say it's a disappointing season for Newcastle, but I don't think it's been a disaster by any means, especially given the injury problems that they've had as well.
Yeah, I'd take the Europa Conference if it was offered to me right now. I think that'd be a fantastic experience for the fans to enjoy. Newcastle would stand a real good chance of winning it. Thomas Frank was very complimentary of Eddie Howe, and he said, it's very impressive if they manage to make it into Europe twice in a row. And lots of people very impressed with Thomas Frank as well. I mean, I read a report the other day that he's got admirers at Manchester United. He was on the list for the potential Liverpool job. Is there a concern that it might not be this summer, but in the years to come, you may end up losing him to a bigger club?
Yeah, potentially. I think the way Brentford are set up, though, that I'm sure someone in the boardroom have already got a succession plan in place and potential candidates. I mean, I was just speaking to someone last night actually about it. That when Thomas Frank actually got the job, he was first team coach at the time. So and for me, he wouldn't have been under consideration for the role. He was just a member of the backroom staff essentially. And Dean Smith, who went to Villa, took his assistant manager with him. But Thomas Frank wasn't one of Dean Smith's men, if that makes sense. He was brought in by the club. But he'd obviously played an integral part of how we were doing. And obviously knew the players kind of from first hand on the training pitch and stuff like that. And I think the way Brentford are set up as a club is that every person is a part of the puzzle or a cog in the machine, if that makes sense. But they aren't the overall thing. So, it'd be a massive loss if we were to lose him. But I think at some point, if a bigger club does come calling, one of the big guys, if it was United, if it was Liverpool, we couldn't stand in his way. We've shown it when Dean Smith went to Villa. As a club, we wouldn't do that anyway. But I think they'd probably have something else up their sleeve, if that was to happen.
It'd be an interesting one to keep an eye on. And just in terms of the way Brentford play, as I've said, Newcastle on the road, absolutely awful, and time again, it's the same old issues costing them goals, costing them victories. The midfield getting totally overrun. There's just always a massive gap between the midfield 3 and the back 4. You could get a bus through it, and I suspect that that's something Thomas Frank's probably picked up upon in his scouting report and his preparation. Is that something you can see Brentford potentially exploiting, the gap that is left between the midfield and Newcastle's defence?
Yeah, I mean, what we don't really have in the squad is natural kind of ball carriers. Really, we don't really have that many players kind of who dribble. You know, what we're really good at is getting in behind, especially with the pace of Mbeumo, who is the biggest, the outlet really. But with Johan Wisser as well, he's got a good eye for goal. So, I think Brentford will certainly pose a threat going forward. It'll be interesting whether Newcastle will take the game to Brentford or whether or not we'll sit back and because that's sometimes I think where some clubs struggle. They're sometimes good on the road because they can hit teams on the break, etc. But when they're at home, if another team sits back, then the onus is on them to come forward, and they can't play in the same way.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see how they're set up because Newcastle, I think, are just a little bit. I mean, they're very inconsistent, and especially on the road, I don't think they've quite worked out. I think they'd like to be a bit more authoritative. I think they'd like to have a ball a bit more, but at the moment the counters where they're strongest at, but that's also just not working. And we saw against Manchester United. I mean, they had the chances and just couldn't take them. That clinical edge missing somewhat, and then defensively just all over the shop. I've spoken about my love for Rico Henry. We've spoken about Ivan Toney moving on. What do you see the future for Bryan Mbeumo? Because I'm a massive fan of him as well. We did a podcast a few weeks ago where we went through and we picked a target from each Premier League side that would like to see at Newcastle, and it had to be realistic. So I'm sticking with this one, but I picked him because I think he's just so exciting. And obviously Toney always gets the headlines, but for me, I think he's your best player. I mean, can you see him staying at Brentford for a little bit longer? Could he do a job at a team like Newcastle?
Yeah, so I think he, for me, he would be a bigger loss than Ivan Toney on current form. Anyway, because when he really stepped up to the plate when Toney was injured, and then he got injured himself, and he missed the AFCON as a result of it. But he's really added kind of a few more goals to his game as well. I think that was the one thing that was missing. His finishing wasn't wasn't amazing, but I think he's really improved that this year, and he's getting he's getting a lot of goals. And yeah, I mean he'd be one I'll be worried about because it'd be a test of the club's resolve if they were to get an offer for him. At a club like Brentford, everyone is for sale if the price is right. But I'd be really worried about trying to replace him. And I think actually, the reality is that if he had shown this form in previous years or whatever, or that he might be gone already, right? But we only paid 5 or 6 million for him from the second tier in France. So if we were to sell him, we'd make a pretty penny, I'm sure.
Yeah, he wouldn't be cheap for any potential buyer. Before I get your prediction for the game on Sunday, Jacob, I just want to talk about some of Newcastle's players. Is there anyone from the Newcastle United side that you're particularly looking forward to seeing or particularly fearing on Sunday?
I wouldn't say fearing, but one person who I think has done really, really well there since he's gone is Dan Burn. And I remember watching him when I used to kind of report on Fulham way back when, and I remember, and he was a great lad. But I remember one game against Stoke when Fulham went down. I think they lost 4-1, and he got put at left back, and he got really, really exploited that day. And I thought, oh, this guy shouldn't be playing in that position. But actually, when he's played at left back, he's actually done a pretty good job. So fair play to him. I'm a big admirer of him, and like I say, he was really real down to earth guy as well. I'm not sure what he's been like to deal with the press back up there, but like I said, he's a really top fella.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy, and I don't think it's lost on him the journey he's been on and how privileged he is to be playing for Newcastle United, because that's all he's ever wanted to do. And from pushing trolleys and Asda to playing Champions League football, scoring in the Champions League against PSG, I think he's had a fantastic season. He's now playing centre back because of Newcastle's injuries, and he hasn't had the best of times, especially since the turn of the year at left back. He's probably had 1 or 2 games where he's been decent, but teams start to figure him out, and you put him up against a pacey winger. So assuming that Mbeumo might start on the right, potentially, if it was up against Dan Burn at left back, there's only one winner there. But it's Lewis Hall at left back. So am I right with the position, or is Mbeumo on the other side?
Yeah. So I mean, it depends really, because sometimes it depends if we play as a 2 up front, and then it would be kind of him and Tony. But I think even it's a 3. If we were to play a 3, he'd be on the right side, and then he has the ability to cut in and then kind of whip one in the top corner, hopefully.
Yeah, well, not hopefully, Jake. But Lewis Hall's left back, and he's a young man we've had to wait a long time to see. But every game he plays now, he just looks so good. And Dan Burn looking much more comfortable. It's centre back. There's just no pace, unfortunately, though.
Yeah, that's his natural position, isn't it? Really, Burn.
Yeah.
And I remember when Fulham actually signed him, I think they signed him from Darlington at the time. And I think one of his first games he played against Man United, and he was brilliant. And he said he hadn't headed so many balls since non-league days. And the headlines in all the papers the next day were Man United are play like a non-league team.
It's going to be interesting because I think him at centre back, as I said, he's looked so much better. But it was Emil Kraft with him on Wednesday against Manchester United, and there's just a real lack of pace. And even if it's Fabian Schär back in, who's been missing with injury, there's still a lack of pace. And it's no wonder that they're trying to sign Tosin from Fulham or Lloyd Kelly from Bournemouth because they are lacking a bit of speed at centre back. So it'll be interesting to see if Ivan Toney can exploit that lack of pace and can find his rocket boosters. But from a Newcastle point of view, hopefully he doesn't. All that remains to be done, Jake, is to get your score prediction for Sunday. How do you see this one going?
I think it'll be 2-2. I think it'll be quite a frantic game. Quite an exciting one, hopefully. But 2-2, which probably wouldn't be any good for you guys.
It wouldn't be unless Manchester United draw at Brighton, then it would be an all right result. Chris Sutton as well has gone for 2-2 on the BBC website because I just had a look at the predictions there. But look, a win is what we want from a Newcastle point of view. But if we get a point and Man United get a point in that, then that suits us as well. I don't know. I'm worried about this one just because I think I was overly optimistic for the game at Old Trafford on Wednesday, and I was severely disappointed. Brighton was similar to Brentford. They had nothing to play for, and yet Newcastle couldn't get the better of them. So I take a point of view offered at me now, but my head kind of says maybe they might get beat. But I don't want to say that and confirm that and lock that in. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw like you, and we'll hope for a little bit better from a Newcastle point of view. But Jake, thank you very much for popping onto the podcast. Pleasure to chat to you. To you guys watching and listening, please hit subscribe, follow, like, leave us a rating and review from wherever you're watching or listening through, and head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news. And from myself, I'll see you guys next week.